Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. You're watching Windows 7 Art. Let's jump straight into it. With the shortening of the daylight hours and the lengthening of the dark, this is a time to cozy up next to firelight with the strengthening chill in the breeze and the smell of snow in the air. Firelight is something that becomes very appealing to me, and it's just a time that I want to cozy up to a good fire and enjoy candlelight. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do a painting that, instead of just featuring a candle or fire on the side like I've done with other paintings before, devoting an entire painting simply to the subject of a flame, specifically the flame of a candle. Let's get into it and treat this video a little bit more like a tutorial how-to video. Now, because I want to feature the candle alone as the focal point in this still life, I want the background to be totally dark, and so I had to wait until nighttime to light a few candles in order to get a good reference photo to go off of, which is what you see me doing here. I want to really focus on the way the flame causes the wax to glow underneath in the dark, and also be very attentive to the way the flame looks on the wick. We're going to pay attention to color and tone and just really look at the image and get it stuck into our minds, and then approach painting it in a very simple way. We're not going to overcomplicate things. We're just going to try to paint what we see. It's a very simple painting, but it's one that we can really do well. So again, we're using acrylic paint, and I'm going to take a few reference photos here in this little staging session in order to get one that I want to feature for the painting. Okay, so I have a small wood panel that I have primed with gesso, this white gesso here. I actually have a video on how to prepare one of these, which I will put in the description box below as a link, so you can watch that and see how I prepare one of these. But the size is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to tone the wooden panel, and we're going to do so using raw sienna acrylic paint. So I got my brushes here, and I'm going to go ahead and use this brush here, just something that will have good coverage. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a bunch of paint on my brush here and just start applying it. Now, the reason we tone a canvas is simply because when you have a canvas that has been toned brown or gray, it provides a better backdrop when you are applying your colors. Because when a canvas is stark white and you start painting over the top of it, that often can play tricks with your eye and make a, let's say if you're painting on a gray to a white surface, the bright white can play tricks with your eye and make you think that the gray is really dark when in fact it really isn't that dark. So when we tone the canvas, we are providing a nice backdrop tone so that we can better judge our colors. And you notice how quickly I'm going as well. This doesn't have to be a long process, especially when you're working with acrylics. It'll dry really quick so that you can get into the painting right away. I'm just going to turn it over. Okay, that's all there is to it. Our canvas is now, or excuse me, our panel is now toned. So we're gonna let this dry and then we're gonna be ready to paint our picture over the top of it. While that is drying, I'm gonna go ahead and plug my laptop in because I have a flash drive with the reference photo. Now that I have the reference photo set up on my laptop over here, and I got my paints over here, I'm ready to begin painting. So I think what I want to go for here is have a candle right here, kind of off center, coming up like this, and that's going to be the focal point. But then I want another candle similar to it farther away, and I'm going to make it a little bit more blurry and out of focus to complement the candle that's going to be in front. So it's going to be really simple. I'll show you the reference photo here really quick so you can kind of see what I'm going for. So as you can see, the background is really simple. It's just going to be pretty much just dark brown to black tones to help the candles stand out. Now, for some reason, I generally don't like to paint with black. I do have a Mars Black acrylic paint, but I feel like it would be better to go with a burnt umber mixture mixed with ultramarine blue. That really makes a nice dark color, so I'm going to try that out first and just see how that looks. I guess you could use black if you want. There's certainly nothing wrong with that, but I just feel like there's going to be more of a richness in the color if I use this burnt umber and ultramarine blue. So we're just going to mix that up quick. I'm a little undecided right now. It might not be dark enough. So that's why I'm putting it in the middle, because I want the airspace around the flame to be slightly lighter. So you know what? Maybe I will try a little bit of that Mars Black. Here it is. We got Mars Black. We're just going to try a little bit of that just to see how it will look on the edges. You know, the Mars Black actually has a umber quality to it. It's got a little bit of a brown hue almost. So I kind of like how it's working with the paint I've already laid down. The ultramarine and umber mixture. So I think I'll just blend this burnt umber and ultramarine combination outwards into the Mars Black, just for the backdrop, which is super easy to do. But because acrylic paint dries so quick, I'm going to want to start blending it in the edges right away, just so that I get that nice fade effect. And then I can add the solid Mars Black on the edges. Okay, I think I like that. You notice that there is a lighter glow kind of effect already being established with the background right here, kind of just centered right here, right where I'm going to have that main candle be shining. You know what? I actually think I might want to raise it up a little bit. I'm just going to take a little bit of that lighter brown mixture and make it go upward. Just ever so slightly. Okay, this is now dry, and we're going to start painting the candle over the top of it. You see I got my reference photo over here, and one thing I want to point out before we start painting the candle is that acrylic paint dries darker than when you first apply it. So that's just something to remember when you're using acrylic paint. It tends to dry just a little bit, just a hair darker. So how I compensate for that when I'm wanting my painting to just stand out and still maintain those bright, highlights and whatnot, is I just tend to layer the highlights, getting brighter and brighter on top of each other. You don't have to worry about that with oil paint, because what you see is what you get with oil paint. That's what I like about oils. Let me know in the comments what you guys prefer to paint with, acrylics or oils. Okay, so let's paint the candle. Alright, so I'm going to add this crimson to my palette, and I'm also going to add this yellow ochre and cadmium red light hue to the palette as well. I think for right now I'm going to use this size brush to get the candle going. Now I do actually have some burnt umber, and I'm going to add that to the crimson, and also just a little bit of raw sienna to that crimson, just so I get a nice dark nutty red color. Okay, and then we're gonna just, I think the candle is gonna be, the main candle is gonna be right about here. I'm going to add a little bit more of that burnt umber to it. And also, I think I'm going to add some of that Mars black to it as well. Now, because we're moving away from the light source on the candle here, the wax is going to get darker, keeping in mind that the acrylic paint does dry darker. Now, I'm going to really be using a lot of the Mars black as I go down, just because I want the candle to fade out. Just fade out into the dark, until you almost can't see it anymore against the backdrop. Okay, now I'm going to pretty much just use straight Mars black here to fade it out at the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to switch brushes to something smaller here. And I'm going to put that other candle right in here in the background. Now, using the same brush, I'm just going to go ahead and start adding more light to the tops of the wax here, to the top of the candles. So I'm going to grab some of that cadmium red, and I'm just going to touch the tops here. Now, when I want to blend this down, I'm just going to get rid of the paint on my brush that I'm using. Just wipe it on my towel, and then I'm just going to start to kind of go like this with a dry brush. Just kind of feather it down into the rest of the candle, so it kind of blends that way. Starts to add a glow to the top. And for the color that I'm using, I'm just adding a little bit of raw sienna with that cad red. Now remember, because this candle right here is farther away, it's going to be more fuzzy, more blurry. So keep that in mind when you're painting this one, to let the edges be a little less clean than this one, a little bit more undefined than this one. Right now you can't really see it as much, but it will show up more later on. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of yellow ochre into the mixture just to lighten it a little bit. And you want these to be dry before you go in again, so I'm just going to let that sit just a minute. And the great thing about acrylics is they do dry quick, so I won't have to be waiting too long. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Okay, so the more I look at it, the more I think I want to actually make this candle just a little bit wider. Just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do that here. Okay, so I got some titanium white and I mixed it with some of the reds on my palette to create kind of a bright pink sort of color. And I'm going to go ahead, get my scoop stool here, and go ahead and paint on the inside where the wick is going to be coming up from. Alright, okay, this is something worth pointing out. I want to make sure that the candle over on the left here doesn't start looking like a mirror image of the candle on the right. I want them both to be unique from each other. I'm going to mix a bright kind of orangish color with my yellow and my red there, my cad red and my yellow ochre, and just kind of go along the top edge here. Maybe add kind of a splotch of wax coming down on the right there. Now on my reference photo, I notice that there is some wax trails of melted wax kind of running down the edge, and against this glow of wax it's going to be a little bit darker because there's a concentration of wax. So I'm going to take a darker color, just a little bit of that crimson with burnt umber I think, and see how this would look coming down from. One thing I'm noticing though is that my wax strip is coming down through the center of the candle, and that's right where the wick is going to come up. So I think I want to actually move that somewhere else. Now I want the wick to come up right from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some burnt umber, mix in maybe just a little bit of crimson, and we'll just stick that right up through the middle. Okay, so there's our wick. Now before I go too far with the wick, actually, I'm going to add the flame in so that I can put the wick a little bit over the top of it, and then we'll go from there. And the other one I'm noticing in the reference photo you can't really actually see the wick. So we're just going to leave that one. That will be part of the defining feature of this close-up here. And while we're waiting for the wick to just dry, I'm going to start working on the candle here again. Just a little bit. Just adding in a little bit more highlights here towards the top. Now this is dry here, this wax drip, so I'm just going to try to go over the top of it with a dry brush and a little bit of paint just to see if I can lighten it up slightly now that I'm adding more highlights, which is working pretty good. Just a little bit. So I got a new brush here, and I'm going to try to paint a little bit of a highlight here where the flame is going to be glowing. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to feather out the edges so that they just kind of disappear slightly. So we're ready to paint the actual flame here onto the candles, and I'm going to use my detail brush again to do that. And I'm just going to mix some of my titanium white with my yellow ochre, and I'm going to go ahead and put this flame on. And the color is almost white. Okay, that's going to be pretty good. I want this to be relatively straight though. I think I want the flame to be nice and straight, so I'm going to make the point go just a little bit higher up. I think that works. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one now. Now, the reason I didn't want to point this flame as much as I did this one is because I'm noticing on the reference photo that the shape of this one isn't quite as pointed because it is more out of focus. So that is why I softened it. Now I got a little bit of this cerulean blue here, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of that on my palette. Now I'm going to add a little bit of titanium white and that cerulean blue to the bottom part of the flame here. Now I'm just going back over the flames with more of that flame color just to really make it bright. So now that I have it basically looking the way that I want, I can get in here now and start adding some final details and highlights to finish the painting. Alright, now that I've got some detail put into the candle here, and also some background detail for this one, I'm going to take a new brush and I'm going to do some dry brushing around the flames just to give them a little bit more of a glow. And the color that I'm going to be using for that is going to be just slightly darker than the flame color. So I'm probably going to add a little bit more of the yellow ochre and maybe even a little bit of raw sienna to my flame mix. I'm going to do dry brushing, and basically what dry brushing is when you take a clean brush and you put a little bit of paint on the tip of it and your brush is dry, and you just take that small amount of paint and you just begin to rub it on, and it creates a nice lightly applied paint effect. And so we're going to try it out for these flames here to see if we can make them look like they're glowing a little bit more. And I oftentimes will take my brush once I've put the paint on it and actually rub it onto the towel to get a lot of that excess paint off. So we're going to just take it lightly and just along the edges here. We're going to lightly apply it. Okay, that is working out a little bit. It's not quite as smooth as I would like. So I'm going to get less paint. Okay, I'm not really liking how that's looking, so I'm going to take a little bit of water onto my brush and just try to get rid of some of that. Move it around a little bit more. Okay, that's a little bit better. That's the general idea that we're going for. Okay, I think that'll about do it. I'm going to do that same effect to this one over here. These little techniques can be kind of tricky. Basically all I did was I did the dry brushing, but then I added a little bit of water and then started doing the same type of technique over the top of it. Alright, so I like how this is looking, but the only thing I notice here so far that I want to get at right away is I don't like how the candle fades down. You can barely see it, but you can see the whole candle going off the bottom of the panel here. I really like the way I did this one where you can't see it coming all the way down. It just kind of materializes out of the background. So I'm going to try to fix that with this one here quick. Take a little bit of a bigger brush and some Mars Black and just go over this. And it just looks darker right now because it's wet. It'll dry and it will be more like the other background Mars Black. Now I'm going to let that dry and then it will have that same effect as this one. Okay, I think that just about does it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm actually really pleased with the way it turned out. Really happy with it. I think it's a good little painting. Hope this video was beneficial to you guys. But we'll catch you in the next one. Until next time, God bless you guys. We'll see you later.